there is an endless supply of Manjaro copium, but they have had some unquestionable mistakes. Whether it's the fact that they shipped a broken build of PAMAC that DDoSed the AUR, not once, but twice, letting the SSL cert on their website expire 3 times. This should never happen, they should be automatically renewed, or shipping unstable Asahi Linux packages that don't work on Apple Silicon devices. These notes were written before the recent addition of sending a broken patch up to Arch Linux ARM that didn't make any sense to ship. And I could keep listing things out basically all day, but I want to make something very clear. I don't hate Manjaro. I don't hate you if you work on Manjaro. I don't hate you if you use Manjaro. All I am here to do is tell you what is happening. Manjaro is just really fun to talk about. If you want to keep using it, that's totally fine. It's your computer. But there is one scandal that I've talked about plenty of times, and plenty of other people have as well, and for a very long time was listed on the Manjaro website. But it seems like there might be more to that story, and it didn't exactly happen the way that everyone initially thought. That drama being Philip Mueller, Jonathan, and the €2,000 laptop. But before we get into those details, there's probably a lot of people that have no idea what I'm talking about. So let's just recap the story so everybody's up to speed. Back in July of 2020, a forum post was made on the Manjaro forums and cross-posted over to the Manjaro subreddit. This was made by Jonathan, entitled Change of Treasurer for Manjaro Community Funds. And in this forum post, he discussed how a €2,000 laptop was purchased with the intention of it being a dev machine, compiling code on the go, things like that. This purchase was supposedly disputed by Jonathan, and according to him, he was the treasurer, and the whole purpose of a treasurer is to ensure the proper use of funds so they're not being wasted on things that just, don't really matter. This led to a giant internal squabble, whereby the result of this, Jonathan says, Phil was unhappy about the rejection and the additional questions about how community funds would be used. As a consequence, I am no longer treasurer, leaving Phil in control of all funds once again. And following this removal, the expense was approved, the laptop was purchased, implying that Philip was the one who actually approved the expense. And this has basically been the story for a couple of years. Rumors have been circulating, and this has been used as like a massive hammer to beat Manjaro with. A big part of the reason why is Manjaro never properly came out and actually explained the details of what is going on. There was a lot of stuff that was basically just left up to interpretation. But then, seemingly out of nowhere 2 weeks ago, the man in question, Philip, actually got in contact with the maintainer of Manjaro, creating an issue and a pull request, giving more context on what's actually going on, and saying that the funding problem was a false claim. Now, keep in mind, this is the person who had their reputation basically dragged through the mud, so I remain skeptical on things that I cannot verify. But he did include a lot of information that is 100% verifiable that we're going to be going through. For the other things, we'll have a look at what he's saying and come to our own conclusion. So we'll start with the easiest. Who purchased the laptop and who approved the claim? Everything in this case is being done on the Open Collective. The Open Collective includes all of these logs entirely publicly, and we can very easily go and verify it. So initially, Manjaro said that Philip was the one who purchased the €2,000 laptop. This isn't accurate. The one who purchased the laptop is a completely different person who may be affiliated with Philip, but is a different person. Helmut Stult. At the time of purchase, he was maintaining a lot of packages under both Manjaro and also base Arch Linux. The exact kind of person who needs a powerful device for compiling packages so, he can actually test them and make sure they're working, which, is something Manjaro should probably do more often, but that's besides the point. Also, this expense was not approved by Philip, at least not directly. I can't really say it was going on behind closed doors. Maybe a discussion was had, but at least publicly, he is not the one who approved it. So it was first created by Helmut Stult, rejected by Jonathan. Helmut then went and updated it, probably to go and add some extra clarification, things like that. And then it was actually approved by Vitor Lopez. This final person down the bottom here is someone affiliated with Open Collective, not the Manjaro project. This person here is not Philip. Not Philip whatsoever. There was also this claim floating around that the dispute itself was over the purchase of the laptop, that this was a waste of money, and there was a much better thing you could purchase, like, renting out a dev server and having this that everybody could use and getting it for a couple of years at the exact same price. I feel like this floated around because this is the way that the community felt. A lot of people, when they saw this purchase, were like, this is a giant waste of money. But we do have some comments from Jonathan to explain how he felt at the time. In response to someone saying, the only shady thing is that all of this should have been clarified internally and not done hasty nor emotional, he says, I've tried that on how many occasions now? 3, 4, every time the same sequence of events. I'm told it's my job to release expenses, not question them. I disagree. Others in the team agree with me. Seems to be resolved. Repeat, a month or so later. Basically saying he felt like a yes man, and the position that he was in didn't have any of the power it was supposed to have. Basically, he was a robot that approved expenses. He was never there to question it. That was someone else's job. And in the half response that Manjaro did give at the time, called Change in Manjaro Team Composition, Philip did respond and give a bit more context on the situation, explaining how, a laptop maybe isn't the most optimal purchase, maybe you could get a build server instead, but in this case, a laptop did actually make a lot of sense, but it didn't really matter, because the laptop wasn't what the disagreement was about. The disagreement was not caused because the purchase was inappropriate, as everyone involved was mostly on the same page about how the money should be spent, including Jonathan. The actual disagreements were about the process of allocating the funds. Jonathan and I had a disagreement about how the approval process for community funds has to run. He was concerned about my overlapping roles within the company, the Manjaro company, and the community, which would create potential for conflict of interest. I was concerned on the way funding requests currently were being processed, which would discourage team members from adequately expressing their funding needs. It resulted in a long discussion with him and several team members of the community developer team. And this claim about the laptop and how the funds were being spent was actually backed up in Jonathan's original post, saying, another expense was submitted today for a €2,000 laptop with discussion between only Phil and the person wanting the laptop. This was rejected as the policy had not been followed, and I queried the expense. Other privately discussed expenses also came to light. Basically, Phil was doing some shady stuff in the background, setting up expenses without going through all of the proper channels, and Jonathan wasn't exactly happy about that. And Jonathan being in a position to stop it, that's exactly what he did. This led to a disagreement, and ultimately to everything else that happened. Now the problem is, this is basically where the evidence ends. Everything after this point is pretty much just open to discussion. Firstly, there's the matter of his removal as treasurer, which he updated on the post, but we didn't notice, and basically ran with anyway. What it says now is, as a consequence, I am no longer treasurer, leaving Phil in control of all funds once again. What it originally said is, as a consequence, I have been removed as treasurer, leaving Phil in control of all funds once again. This slight change of words completely changes what it means. The reason he originally said removed is simple. From his eyes, he was removed. In response to someone saying, to me, it seemed like that you took the initiative to step down as a treasurer because you got frustrated with the conflict, he says, so I wasn't holding back the project, I made all the team an admin on Open Collective. I was then removed as admin, ergo, I was removed. And he ends the entire thread by saying, to update, there may be a public statement from the team later which will seek to smooth things over. That was that post I was just mentioning before. As far as it goes for me, Phil has decided it is time for me to leave the project. See you all on the other side. So from his perspective, it seems like he was removed. Maybe it was framed in a little bit of a disingenuous way, but he was removed as the treasurer. Now, Philip, on the other hand, he disagrees with the fundamental claim. He doesn't think that Jonathan was ever the treasurer. From the issue on the Manjaro thread. Also, Jonathan was just the initial admin of the groups he created on the fiscal host. The actual treasurer is on the fiscal host side to finally approve any spending based on the policies a project has. But in that initial thread from Jonathan, he titles himself as the treasurer, he mentions being the treasurer multiple times, and regardless of how many times Philip actually replies to this thread, he never questioned that Jonathan was the treasurer. It wasn't until we get to the reply thread where they use a different term for Jonathan. They refer to him as the administration of donations. Is that different from a treasurer? Maybe. It's certainly not called treasurer. I don't know how Manjaro names their individual roles internally, but if this is accurate, no, he was not the treasurer. But I find it really strange that he was never questioned on being the treasurer in that initial thread. Maybe Philip just felt like that wasn't really important, but everybody was under the assumption that he was the treasurer, and it seems like he was under the assumption that he was the treasurer as well. So, what was the deal there? Now, while that should clear up a lot of the concerns, it's not to say the entire situation wasn't handled terribly by both sides involved. Philip, for example, thought it was a good idea to multiple times unlist the thread, with another moderator relisting it. Why you would try to unlist it while people are really angry, I don't understand. It was just going to make people more angry. Trying to silence people is never going to work. And whilst Philip remained firm that no funds were misused, saying, I can assure you all, no donations were misused at any point, it didn't change the fact that a lot of people were not happy with this expense. It didn't seem like it was properly explained to the community, which doesn't need to be done for every single expense, but when something does become a big drama, it is going to help, alleviate some of those concerns. While he did include the explanation about why a build server, wouldn't make the most sense in this case, a lot of people still argued the laptop was too expensive or you could have used a build server anyway. Maybe people were being unfair, but it didn't seem like it did a great job at alleviating concerns. Now, the biggest problem with all this is while it would have been lovely to get Jonathan's side of the story to find out exactly what happened, piecing together both sides, that can't exactly be done. Because earlier this year in 2023, Jonathan sadly passed away. He was a very important part of both the Arch and the Manjaro communities, and I'm sure he'll be missed. So this is basically just going to fade into the history of Manjaro. It's probably going to be brought up from time to time, but hopefully when it does, you're a bit more informed on what actually happened and don't spread around things that are entirely false. If I make a mistake like that again, please do let me know. And, if it's actually a mistake, I will be happy to correct it. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Did you even know this drama happened? Do you think it was a good idea to buy the laptop? Do you think it was a bad idea? What do you think about administration of something or other? Whatever, administration of funds? Do you think that's actually a treasurer? Let me know what you think down below. So if you like this video, go and like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon Scribes Daily Bearer Pay, linked down below. That's going to be it for me, and I run Arch, by the way.